Today's gospel passage should make most of us in this room at least somewhat uncomfortable. The man in today's gospel, when asked if he's ever committed a notable sin, was able to confidently say no, to say that he had followed the commandments from his youth. He's never had any sexual immorality. He's never stole anything or cheated anyone. He's never lied, and he's taken care of his family, particularly his parents. In short, he has lived a good moral life. His only shortcoming is that he's rich. And because of who he is, Jesus tells him that he has one step further to go, that he should give all his riches to the poor, leave everything behind, and follow Christ. And let's be clear, 90% of the people in this room, myself included, are rich by biblical standards. And thus, this passage should make us uncomfortable. But what are we to make of this? Is God calling all of us to do the same? Are we all called to sell our homes, empty our retirement funds, go find a cardboard box and hope for the best? Is that what God calls for everyone? I don't think it is. And in fact, there are plenty of examples in the gospel where Christ is talking to someone with wealth and he does not ask this of them. So this is something he has asked specifically of this man. But, and this is very important, I think what challenges us today in this gospel is that we must be open to this sort of sacrifice if God calls us to it. We must all be people who put God and our fellow human being above our wealth. That is not to say we won't have some wealth, but it means our priorities must start with God and caring for our fellow human being. And only after that is wealth acceptable. Now, this gives me an opportunity to bring up one of my favorite saints, St. Ignatius of Loyola. And there's really two things that I love about him. First are his insights on discernment and how we should separate God's guidance from other voices that we might hear in our prayer lives, in particular Satan and other evil spirits. And I'll come back to that. But second, and the part that I think is most relevant to today's gospel, is his insights on attachments to things of the material world. St. Ignatius has something he calls his first principle and foundation. And when you hear a first principle, you ask, well, I wonder what the second is. There is no second. This is it. This is the principle. And he says that everything in existence, everything that God created, was created so that we might fulfill our purpose, which is to love and cherish God. And as such, whenever we use anything in creation to that end, when we use our money or the material gifts of the world, and it is something that brings us closer to God, that is good. At the same time, the inverse is just as true. Anything in the material world which becomes a stumbling block, which keeps us from God, is something we must rid ourselves with and lose our attachment to. And we see this phenomenon playing out in today's gospel passage. Here we have a good man, and Christ loved him. But I think Christ also saw in his heart that he had an attachment to his wealth, an attachment that was going to stand in the way. But Christ decides, no, I'm going to offer this man a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to give him a chance to live an even better life than he could possibly imagine. But what does the man do? he goes away. He goes away sad. He was too attached to his wealth. He couldn't respond to this great opportunity, this gift from God. And he couldn't do it for a reason that I think challenges more of us than we want to admit. We love our wealthy lives, our stuff, and the lives that go along with that, more than sometimes we love God. Now, I mentioned the other reason that I like St. Ignatius is his insights into discernment, how we can discern God's will for his lives. And he has his rules for discernment. And one of his rules is, for people who are in a place where they are far from God, what the devil most wants is for us to be ignorant to how we are far from him. He doesn't want to bring it up. He wants it to stay as quiet as possible. Because he knows, as human beings who naturally desire God, if we were to see the truth, if we were to be confronted with the truth, we are likely to respond. And so when we are far away, the devil wants us to be ignorant and quiet of it, to dismiss any real problems in our lives. And so I say to all of you, and I say it to myself all the time, if this passage doesn't cause you some discomfort, you need to think about it more. Attachment to wealth is a real risk for almost all of us. And the more we are confident we are not susceptible to it, that's exactly what the devil wants. He wants us to pretend like it's not a potential problem. He wants us to ignore the possibility. And if we do that, I guarantee that if we are not falling into it now, we are highly susceptible to be falling into it in the future. And so today I pray that we wrestle with this passage this week, that we sit humbly before God and ask him, are we too attached to our possessions? Are we too attached to our current way of life? We must ask him if we have refused to consider something he is calling us to because we're concerned of how it may disrupt the comforts of our life. And I can promise you, if you do that, it will be uncomfortable, but the replies that we hear from God will be replies of love. Just like his reply to the rich man today was one of love. God is calling us away from our attachments. And if we can find our way away from them, we can find our ways to a far better life. And it is the only way we will ever have true peace.